Tying up a quick Carrie Stevens pattern today. This is called the Larry. It's kind of like the brother and or sister fly to the Larry Special. Both of those flies were named after a gentleman by the name of Larry Parsons. Larry Parsons was the owner of Lakewood Camps from 1942 till 1975. He was also the mail delivery contact for Upper Dam in the Rangeley region. Therefore, he got to know the Stevenses pretty well. And she named this after Larry Parsons. It's an interesting fly, very quick to do. The wing takes a little bit of time because of the setup on it, but once you have those made, the fly goes together fairly quick. That's the Larry. I'll get started tying. Start the Larry with my hook in the vise. This is a Partridge CS15 in a size 4. I'm going to debarb the hook. For thread, I'm going to start with a Wapsi UTC 210 Denier in white. There is a floss body on this in red, so I want to start with the white so that I don't darken that up. I'm going to put a base layer of thread all along the hook shank, stopping right at the beginning of my tip. So I'll stop here at the beginning of my tip. The tip on the Larry is some silver tinsel. I'm using a Danville size 10 silver and gold Mylar tinsel. I'm going to tie that in with the gold side up. Pull that over to my left so that I just have a little bit sticking into the body there, just as an anchor. Now I'm going to keep winding the thread down on top of where the tip is going to be, just to secure it in, as well as give me a nice smooth base just beyond the point of the hook. Then I'll bring it back up. There is no tail in the Larry, so at this point I can go ahead and put the body on. The body is an orange floss. I'm using a Danville 4-strand Rayon in orange. I'm going to tie this in so that it's the length of the body. At this point, I'm going to a little wax on my thread and flatten the thread so that I can wrap that in a little bit quicker. So with the body all tied in and secured, I'm going to go ahead and apply the floss, and then I'll apply the tip and the rib. So now that I have the body applied and the tip and the floss, I'm going to change over to my orange thread. The head on the Larry is a black head with an orange band. I like to set down the orange as the base so that otherwise, if I try to put the orange on top of the black, it just gets awfully dark. For the orange thread, I'm using this is a Wapsi UTC 140 denier in a burnt orange. I like a little bit darker orange on this. You could certainly use a regular orange. I don't know that I'd go as bright as like a fire orange or anything like that, but it's up to you. I'm going to cover all of that white thread up with some orange, and now I'm ready to tie in the throat. The throat is just some yellow hackle fibers, or barbs, I should say. I'm going to use some Schlappen here. I'm going to tie these in 3 clumps. I want them to be about halfway down the body. One thing about selecting the barbs that you're going to use for the throat, a lot of these feathers have nice long barbs on them that you can use, like these right here. But I also don't mind using some of these. As you get out towards the tips, the barbules themselves get a little bit longer. That's why they look kind of more fuzzy and fluffy. I don't mind incorporating some of this, not all of this down here, but just a little bit right in here on the sides of the throat. I think it just gives it a little bit more body, and it just moves a little bit better. So I have just a little bit here. I'll tie that in on my side, and then my third clump will go over on the other side. You can see in this one here, I have a little bit more of the fluff in it. And like I said, I don't mind incorporating just a little bit of that. I think it just adds a little bit more movement to it. So with all 3 segments of my throat in, I'm going to smooth off the head area here for the first part of the wing, which is 5 or 6 strands of Peacock Herl. And I am just using some strung Peacock Herl here. I'll just pick out about 5 or 6 strands here, and then I will just massage these a little bit to try and get the tips fairly even. I don't have to have them perfectly even. Matter of fact, I kind of like them a little bit uneven. I just think it gives it a more natural appearance as well as motion in the water. So we'll get those close. I'm going to take those and tie those in. I want them to extend ½ inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch, something like that, just past the bend of the hook here, about where the tail is going to end on the wing. I shouldn't say tail because it's not a tail on the fly, it's the back end of the wing. I'm scooching these around just a little bit to get them all lined up and right on top of the head space here. Because the CS15 doesn't have a closed eye, it's more or less a looped eye folded back on itself. I get a little bit of a flat tying platform up here, which is kind of nice on these. You don't have to have that for these flies, but it lends itself a little bit. Cleaning this up, I'm now going to tie in the wing. Now the wing on the Larry, very straightforward and simple. It is a Black Hackle with a slightly shorter white hackle. So I have a black hackle here, a white hackle on the outside that's just slightly shorter. And then there's a lemon wood duck flank feather for a shoulder and jungle cock for the eye. I'm going to match those up down here at the base. I should say the base or the wing, the front of the wing. I want to make certain my tips back here are evened up. Trim away the excess rachis here so I have just a little bit of a handle to tie in. And then I'm going to tie that in, and in this case, it will be on top, but on this half of the top of that flat space. A few wraps to secure it, and then take a look at it. As long as it's running nice and horizontal down along the body, I think it is great. We want to make certain that it's nice and vertical. It's not cocked to one side. Then I can tie in the other half of the wing. Make certain my tips are fairly even. And again, this is going to be tied in on top of that flat part, just on the other half across from the other tie-in spot. You want to make certain that they're together and they are nice and vertical. Once you have them in place, go ahead and secure them down with some more wraps. Double check them. And then I'm going to clean up the headspace here. You see I have a little bit of a drop from the ends of the rachis for the wings. I want to smooth that off. Then I also want to make certain that I've covered up any of the black parts of the wing or the rachis or anything with some initial thread wraps, especially in the middle, because that's what the orange band comes from. At this point, I'm going to flatten my thread, and then I'm going to put in about a 9 or 10 turn whip finish. I flatten the thread here simply because it will smooth off all this orange space as I am putting in that whip finish. Just an extra touch. You don't have to do this. If you don't want to, that's fine. Remember, we're going to put some head cement on this, a couple coats of lacquer on it, and it will be nice and secure and fairly smoothed out. This just gives it an added little touch. Secure down the orange thread. I can cut that away. Now I'm going to attach, I'm going to double check it because I can still scooch this just a little bit here. Now I'm going to attach my black thread. I'm using a Danville 6/0 in black. I like to do the rear band first. I'm going to attach this inside where that rear band space is going to be. Get a few wraps in there to secure the tag end of the thread, and I can cut it away. Then I'm going to cover the space up with some thread wraps. If you're tying this to go fishing, then you wouldn't have to really be too concerned about it being more or less a flat black band. I think if you're going to tie this to give to somebody, then you'll want to make a little effort to make certain you're not building up too much thread to where you kind of have a bulky or round sort of black band. So I'm going to cover up about 1/3 of the head space back here. And again, with my thread towards the rear of that, I'm going to flatten my thread, and I'm going to, by hand, put in, 5 or 6 turn whip finish. And I do this by hand because the throat on my whip finish tool, the space right here between these two hooks, kind of narrow, and it's a little harder to get all the way back in there. There are bobbins, whip finish tools that have wider throat. I just don't happen to have one, and this is just as easy for me. So I get that whip finish in and secure it. I just want to double check that I didn't get an errant wrap of thread off the front of that, because I could always undo it. I'll tighten my thread up. I can then trim that away from the back, reattach it at the front, and now put in the front band of black. I want to make certain I'm getting everything more or less covered up here. Once I have that where I want it, this time I will use my whip finish tool. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to get just the right placement of the thread with the tool than it is your fingers. A lot of practice and you can get it by hand down pretty good. With that secured, I can then, some of those thread wraps just kind of moved on me. Since this is a fishing fly, I'm not going to concern myself with it. But on that whip finish, and it happens sometimes when you have these slopes like this that are kind of pronounced. What I could have done is, while the thread was hanging there with the whip finish in, I could have added some head cement to all of it, let it set up after a couple minutes, and then cut my thread off. That's an option if you run into that happening. But like I said, with that head cement on there, and in a minute, a couple of coats of clear lacquer, the Larry will be set up just fine. So there is the Carrie Stevens Larry. As I mentioned, she had a tendency towards naming some of her flies after various people. Some of them were customers, some of them people that bought her flies, fished her flies, and then just some people that she knew. So there's the Carrie Stevens Larry. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com, where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. But what's important is to remember, only fly tying If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.